does 50 grams of protein look like in...
Before I read that book, I would train really hard, focus on drop sets, RPT, DTP, undulating, periodization, all this stuff.
About your younger self starting your journey, and there's going to be people watching this podcast who've just started their journey this year. It's January, they're trying to get some direction with what they're doing. So what is
the fact that we like certain carbs, plants, fruit and stuff like that, we should have the things that we want in our diet.
Welcome to You Know What, the podcast for you that dispels the myths and BS in the fitness industry whilst leveling up your A game in everyday life. We are your hosts, Nick Finch and Dan King.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of You Know What. Today we are going to talk about what happens if you consume more than 50 grams of protein.
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it? And do you know what? What does 50 grams of protein look like in... The reason for this as well, we're going to go into a little bit of depth because there are pros and cons to your protein consumption, and you really need to bear these in mind if you're wanting to build the best physique possible and feel the best you want to feel. So one thing I want to bring in here is my little random fact. Now, one of the smallest countries in the world, in Luxembourg, Hold on.
What's funny, man? What's funny about Luxembourg?
Just give me a second. One of the smallest countries in the world, Luxembourg, is per capita the biggest meat eater. They eat on average 300 pounds of meat per annum.
So that's Eddie Hall.
So, well, could you imagine how much Eddie Hall eats? Now, I've got a little bit more of this fact continues. Now, whenever I think about meat, I think about steak. What meat comes into your head when you think meat? If someone turns around to you and goes, "Oh, meat," what do you think?
Yeah, steak.
Steak.
Yeah.
So, I went on my fitness pal and I did a little calculation for it to see how much protein that was, because you know my protein brain. Everyone knows my protein brain. So, if you were to eat 300 pounds of steak per year, which would be equal to 42,184 grams of protein per year.
Damn.
Now, funnily enough, that sounds like a lot. And it is a lot. It's a lot of protein. But on average, that would mean the average Luxembourger consumes 115 grams of protein on average per day. Now, when you put that next to the average consumption of people in the UK consume 76 grams per day.
Wow. Yeah, no, I can vouch for that.
So bear in mind that's about a 40 gram difference between these two countries.
Do you know what? I was actually not tracking my protein for a long time, and I was thinking I was getting about 120 a day on average. I was thinking, yeah, that's acceptable for, right now. Track it, and it was around about 80 grams a day. That's it. Upped it, and suddenly strength, energy levels went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine how it feels for people to be on 80 grams a day.
See, now that actually brings me on to the kind of proper point of this podcast, and it's a lot of people that are going to be watching this specific podcast are going to be struggling with their food and struggling with getting protein in specifically. Now, we speak to our clients a lot, we speak to other people in the industry, and there's a lot of onus around why people struggle with food. Hence why I started the series, What Does 50 Grams of Protein Look Like? To make it easier for you guys to see how much protein you're actually getting in the food you're consuming. Now, when you started your journey off, what for yourself was one of the biggest struggles you had with getting protein in?
Me?
Yeah.
Mate, protein is convenience wise, it's actually quite hard to find good sources of protein that are cheap. So for me, it was cheap. It was about being on a budget. Because when I was a student, obviously when you're a kid, you don't know anything about protein really, unless your mum tells you, and you just eat what she gives you. But then as you become an adult and you start to realise I want to get bigger, and you start reading into protein, you then go and buy it at a shop, and you realise that it's actually like ridiculously priced for protein, unless you bulk food, prepare it in advance. So personally, mate, for me, when I first was trying to get protein in, I struggled with the financial side of it. I didn't know how to cook protein in a way that I actually enjoyed. So I struggled. Are
you saying then that the difficulty really came from more the price point of the protein that you were buying? What kind of protein sources were you buying to help fit into your budget as a student?
Chicken, tuna, eggs.
Chicken, tuna, eggs.
Chicken, tuna, and eggs. Tuna I came away from because, as you're probably aware, if you have too much tuna, it can lead to mercury toxicity. So they reckon about 3 cans per week on out. It depends, obviously. So I came away from that a little bit. But eggs are the cheapest source of protein I found in terms of actual food. Mm-hmm. And then chicken breast was very close. Obviously, chicken thigh can be the cheaper one. However, I'm a big fan of chicken breast. I'm sure many people are. Maybe. And I found those were the best sources. Steak was a little bit pricier. However, the protein content was slightly higher than chicken, I found. But yeah, man, What about you?
So I mean, the main struggle I had was actually understanding why I'm eating the protein I'm eating.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, I was getting it, like, my family are big meat eaters. My dad especially, a big meat eater. So whenever I came home, there was always meat on the table. When I was at uni, there was always meat that I was buying in and sorting out. Actually, one of the biggest companies that I went to try and help my protein sources was Muscle Food. I think a lot of people have heard of Muscle Food. It's basically like wholesale meat that you order online. They bring you these giant boxes of meat that come through the door. You get so many chicken breasts, and actually the quality of it is pretty good.
I'll tell you something about those chicken breasts though, mate. They smell of fart. Because is it sulfur? Is that what they put in it? Yeah. So when you open it up, that bag, the chemical that they put in to like keep it fresh for longer stinks of farts. So I just remember smelling a fart. And I was
Whenever
like,
you had them,
put me off, man. It put me off.
Could you imagine that, just ordering a box and just like, no, I'm off it now. I don't want the protein that's in that. But no, I genuinely struggled with kind of just identifying the reason why I was eating the protein that I'm eating. Now, one of the big things when we're consuming protein is for muscle building. It's for protein synthesis, it's for growth and repair, and you need it from when you're a child. Like when you look at baby formulas for children, not that I've been down the aisle specifically, but I did a little bit of research into this before the podcast, and actually from a young age you'll see the age ranges, and within the age ranges you'll see the protein content ever so gradually increase. Now, why is that? That is down to children getting bigger, getting heavier, and then we're equating the protein consumption to the weight that they are. Okay?
Also, slightly unrelated, but that could be a reason why also women get more C-sections on average than the past, because babies' heads are getting slightly bigger.
Could be like babies, maybe. I was going to say, if you think about that in a way, that babies in the womb, if they are getting more protein and they're in a more nutrient-rich diet, they're going to be growing more. So actually, does that raise the question, will babies outgrow the womb?
I mean, they already are in some ways, apparently. You know,
wow.
Like C-section, there's data to show that C-sections are increasing. Whether that's to do with the fact that the hips are not growing to support the head, or whether that's because more women are vouching for it because it's less intrusive, obviously, to the destroying, should I say, the whole. Couldn't think of another way to put that. To be honest with you.
I mean, that's really interesting though, because I've never thought about that point, because actually, relatively speaking, yes, children are getting bigger as well. If you look at like the size, Lukaku, any football fans out there, Romelu Lukaku, have you seen photos of him when he was 15?
I don't even know who that is.
He's a striker for Inter Milan now.
All I know is Liverpool's winning.
Oh, okay. Yes. But he's a striker for Inter Milan. There's photos of him at the age of 15, and he is, I think, 1.5 feet taller than the next tallest player. It's crazy. Like it's crazy, just the size of him. But
so are the men in Luxembourg and the women in Luxembourg taller than everyone else?
What? Because they're eating more protein?
Yeah, because you know what we were talking about, like, you know, better nutrient food when you're.
I mean, you did get a photo of someone up from Luxembourg.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That.
But that wasn't anything to do with height.
Very masculine.
It was a very like male model-esque person. So maybe protein's good for beauty treatments too. But it's all about growth and repair. Now I want to come back to the point there. Why are we consuming protein? What is it beneficial for? Why do people go on about it? Why did I create a series about protein? Because for me, the two fundamentals of any diet are your calories and your protein, and carbs and fats can be negotiable. Protein is the fundamental building block. There are actually, from what we know, there are 500 amino acids in the world. Like you can find within different species of animal, different species of plants, all sorts of naturally occurring proteins. We actually only use 20 of those. Now, of those, you have your 9 essential amino acids, which we consume, and the one we are most deficient in is leucine. Now, look, Nick, you like your nutrition side of it. Leucine, why do you think we're more deficient in leucine at the minute than anything else?
I'm not actually too sure, mate.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
So with leucine, I'll come back to it.
Yep.
Leucine, we're deficient in it because we're actually moving away from consuming more red meats. Most of us are dining on diets, as you say, of cheaper products, and this again comes back to socioeconomic factors of the foods like red meats are going up in price. You'll even see your lean beef mince is going up in price. So when we talk about the availability of the protein that we're trying to consume, white meats, eggs, fish are more available to us now. Red meat's less so. If you go and buy a sirloin steak, it's going to cost you £5 to £7 on average. If you go and buy some lean steak mince, yes, it's going to be less, but it's about £2.50, about £4.50.
So richer people tend to live longer and live healthier lives, right? Maybe it's because they can afford more leucine. Or
well,
saints,
in some ways.
maybe.
In some ways.
But that is obviously a factor. Obviously, like rich people can have more availability to potentially better food quality and less stress.
I do want to circle back to another point that we made earlier. Now, we said about your younger self starting your journey, and there's going to be people watching this podcast who've just started their journey this year. It's January. They're trying to get some direction with what they're doing. So what is one big piece of advice that you would give your younger self when you're starting your when you're starting your journey on how to get more protein in?
Before we go on that, I just want to raise a point. Obviously, we're talking about non-essential and essential amino acids. A reason why vegans can struggle getting protein in is because a lot of the vegan foods they have don't have complete amino acid profiles, which means the body doesn't have all the amino acids it needs to build muscle tissue or certain functions in the body. So that's why for a vegan it's very important that you get variety in terms of your protein sources, or you go for those complete sources. I believe tofu is a complete source. Seitan, soy, pea protein I think is complete. Top of my head, I think I've seen that around. So if you're vegan, it's very important that you look at complete protein sources if you're going to get that protein requirement.
Well, also it's food pairing. We've spoken about this on previous podcasts. If you are choosing to do a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, you need to look at your food pairing. So if you're consuming stuff like kidney beans, you need to then partner that with, say, something like tofu to get a complete amino acid profile. I do always like to say as well, I mean, there's a new series that's come out recently, hasn't there, on Netflix? It's like similar to Game Changers.
I've not seen it.
It's another vegan-based one, but it looks at the health factors rather than just weight and performance.
Good.
So it looks at the health factors of vegan diets, and they found on there that vegan diets have been leaps and bounds above omnivorous diets in terms of blood markers, in terms of lipid profiles. They're leaps and bounds above it. Completely understandable, because one, you're actually getting fibre into your diet, which I think a lot of the time people struggle with so much. Like, one of the big areas I want to add into there when I'm saying calories and protein, it's become more evident in recent literature that fibre is so essential. We need fibre to absorb the things we're consuming. Our fibre, as a society in the UK, is under 10 grams on average.
Yeah, it's not good.
And that's bearing in mind that mine's 25, and that's based on body.
Caveat into that because there's a thing called the Carnivore diet. So you know Jordan Peterson, his daughter Michaela Peterson, I think she's called. When you see her on a podcast, she is vibrant. She looks amazing. Like, her skin's clear. She talks with like intelligence. She's like really well put together. And I think she said the last 3 years she's only eating steaks every single day, eggs and other meat.
Does she supplement fibre?
No,
she doesn't supplement fibre at all.
No, to be honest with you, I don't know. She hasn't said anything about that.
Maybe. I mean, this is the thing. We're looking at a forefront here, in my opinion. And if she's saying she's doing it, fair play to her. You know, there's no reason for her to lie. But in my opinion, if she is looking more vibrant, surely she's got the supplement and the nutrients she's missing from.
To be honest with you, a big misconception about meat eating is saying that it's low in nutrients. It's not.
No.
Muscle meat is lower in nutrients than like liver, heart, kidney, brain, stuff like that. If you're eating all the organs in the body, you know, of an animal, then obviously you're going to get nutrients in a bioavailable form that you probably would struggle with a plant-based. That's why animal products can be really good for nutrient deficiencies.
But you need to be consuming those other strains, which normally there's going to be a lot of people that probably are watching this pod being like, fucking ain't liver.
Now this is the thing. I'm not saying because of that reason that the carnivore diet is elite. I think that we should also take into consideration the social element, the fact that we like certain carbs, plants, fruit and stuff like that. We should have the things that we want in our diet. That I think it's more important than what's healthy, because you know, if you're eating whole unprocessed foods, whether it's plant or meat, it's been shown across both sides that you're healthier. So your real focus should be 80% of the time eating good food, and then allowing the cakes, the cookies as a subpar, because your social situation is also really important for happiness and health. Okay, mental health comes from social health as well. You need good social circle. You can't do that if you're the one eating a fucking steak for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Everyone else is eating a normal breakfast. You'll ruin your social life to a degree. So you need to take that consideration, I would say. But
well, we do say that, don't we? I think people forget about the social side of consuming food. A lot of the time we direct it to immediately what's good, what's bad. Yeah. That's literally what people think. And actually, how many times do you turn around to a mate? I mean, we've done it to each other and been like, oh, do you want to go out for a meal? Like, that's the first thing people do when they want to have a social time to each other. And when you go out for a meal, the worst thing I find when you're sitting there, say on a diet, you're looking at the menu going, oh, can't have that. Oh, can't have that. Well, I can't have that because I'm dieting. is horrible, and it makes you feel like you are wasting a meal. Apologies for interrupting the podcast today. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Know What. We really appreciate you listening, subscribing, liking and reviewing everything that we're doing. It's so nice to see so many of you interacting with our podcast as it grows. If you didn't already know, me and Nick have one of the fastest growing online coaching platforms on the planet, and we'd love to get you involved. We're looking for ambitious people looking to grow their careers and grow their experience in health and fitness. Me and Nick have over 10 years of working experience in the fitness industry, and we'd love to help you achieve the results that you've always wanted. Make sure to contact either Coach Dan King or Get Fit by Nick, or even just check the link in our bio to the podcast now. We'd love to hear from you.
That's why I know you had a problem with this, but I like the fact they put calories on meals. Because for someone like myself, I can hit that. I can see, oh, that's 1,000 calories, and I'm like, I've got 1,400 in my head. Bomb.
Well, again, this is me playing devil's advocate to this one. I had an experience literally this weekend. Yeah, this weekend, where I ordered a takeaway with someone, and they turned around to me, were like, oh, I just hate seeing the calories on meals because it deterred me from eating the things I want. And that's where I start to not have an issue with it, but I can see both sides of the argument, because you look at the calories and immediately you think something's unhealthy because of a number. And it's not always a numbers game. And actually, in reality, sometimes that can put people off the foods they love just based on calories. And that's the only devil's advocate kind of point to that I wanted to throw in there. And I know there's a small proportion of people that do struggle with it, but the impact it has can be very great compared to those in the other instances. And I you know what, 90% of the time, I love calories being on there, because for me, who I've been through the process of struggling with calories, I've been through the process of looking at foods and being like, oh, can't have that, I'm on a diet, or that's gonna be bad for me. Now I'm well educated enough that I look at a menu and go, okay, I've got 1,500 in my budget for calories. What can I have from Waggers? Cool, I can have this and this from Waggers. I know I like this and this. Cool. And actually, in a way, it makes selecting a little bit easier.
Mate, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a divide in life. Everything you can imagine, whether it's finance related, relationship related, social related, food related, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has some experience that's worked for them. I think, don't look at the specifics, look at the pattern. And the pattern is generally unprocessed whole food. High protein in your diet always comes up and again as a good thing for the human body. So look at that as a pattern, apply it to your situation. Don't say you have to do carnivore or vegan or do this or do that. Just apply it to your situation, because that's the way to do it.
So, I mean, that brings me up onto kind of the next point that I wanted to talk about. And actually, again, we go back to the point. What advice would you give to your younger self when you first started training, when you first started looking at your goals and saying, okay, I want to look more muscular, I want to actually build on the physique I had, the slim built physique, and actually put some muscle on, or vice versa. Say you put on some kilos and actually I want to whittle down. What would you say to your younger self at the start of your journey? What's the best piece of advice that you could give yourself right now?
My advice is from is not from me. It's from a book that I read called No Nonsense Muscle Building from Vince Del Monte. He's called The Skinny Guy Savior. And before I read that book, I would train really hard, focused on drop sets, RPT, DTP, undulating, periodization, all this stuff, training my ass off, never getting big. And then I read this book and it basically said, eat. So I went out and I just tracked my food on MyFitnessPal, and I saw how many calories and protein I was getting in, and I did whatever it took to hit that goal. That was my sole focus for the entire week. As soon as I did that 1 week, suddenly it was easy for me to think about it. I didn't have to think about it anymore because I'd done it. Once you've done it and you put it into practice, you don't have to think how hard it is, because you've done it and you realise it's not that hard.
I like that.
Yeah,
that was good.
How about yourself, Dan?
My younger self was a very complicated human, and it comes back to the mental game of understanding what the reason is I'm consuming the protein and how much I actually need. So when I was at uni, I was studying a sports science degree, but I still don't understand foundations of dietary side of it, because you don't learn about how much protein people should have in a sports degree, because I should have known it, but I didn't, and I'll be brutally honest, I didn't. And it was actually learning how much you need. So my philosophical, my amount that I say is 1.5 times your body weight in kilos. That would be 0.75 roughly in pounds, so 0.75 grams per pound. And that number actually has hit a sweet spot for me, because it's the point of limiting returns, the point at which you do not see as many benefits as the first initial curve of consuming protein. So I would turn around to myself and say, work it out, be patient with the process, and plan things out. I never planned my meals out. I just kind of turned around and said, I'm going to eat this today, I'm going to eat this today, but never looked at the kind of bigger picture of these protein meals. Take your time, sit down and plan your meals. Look at meals you enjoy, and I always like to say, fistful of protein. That's what people tend to say, fistful of protein on your plate. Yeah, one to two fistfuls of protein. So if that's a chicken breast, that's a chicken breast about that big, and then just two of those next to each other.
Everyone's fist is different. If you're a small person, your fist is going to be smaller. If you're taller or bigger, then they're going to be bigger on average.
But actually, technically, you could equate, unless you're a freak of nature, technically your fist would be proportional to your body.
Yeah.
So you could see that in a way. But yeah, one fistful is always a good way. But plan your meals. Look into meals you enjoy. Look into meals that will fill you up, satiate you, and you know the protein within it you'll enjoy. Like for me, banging tuna mayos. Tuna mayos with a bit of cheese, one of the most simplistic meals you can make, but they have a good amount of protein in. You can double up on the tuna. It's not too overly satiating. You feel like you're going to throw up, and then you can just enjoy the meal. It's great. It's so good. And don't be fearful of cheese. Cheese is a good thing. Just make sure you add it in without...
Especially low sodium. Oh, I forgot what it is.
Interesting.
Low sodium. What is it again?
Low sodium Parmesan.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Low sodium Parmesan cheese.
So low sodium Parmesan cheese has 41.6 grams of protein in it per 100 grams. Now, before everyone on here gets excited about putting Parmesan on everything, I can tell you right now, because I have done a 50 grams of protein video on this, it's a lot of cheese. It's a lot of Parmesan, and it's actually quite a lot of calories as well.
Yeah.
So you have to factor that in, and it's high in fat.
But it tastes good.
It tastes great, yeah. So if you are like going out for a spag bowl and they go, can I have some Parmesan? Go for double.
Right, cool, guys. Happy?
Very happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more we could dive into, guys, but, that's all we got to use today. Got any questions, we'll answer them in another podcast directly.
Yes, we'll catch you later.
Ciao, ciao.